guys, it's Neil again from Heart of Texas Armory, and today I got a video here showing you how I'm going to fix the bezel alignment here on my Vostok. This is a Vostok 020SE Special Edition with a unidirectional bezel. The bezel is super cool, and it's one of the few ones out there that is unidirectional, but you can see the alignment is off there, and no matter where you put it, it is simply not lining up there at the 12 o'clock position. So we are going to attempt to fix that here. And the way we're going to do this first, we're going to pry off the bezel, and I'm using this thing here from KWO, and it's a bike tire lever here, and you can see the shape of it here. The construction is made out of a hard polymer, and it allows you to get in between the case and the bezel and pop that bezel off without scuffing up your case. So pretty cool thing here. You can pick these up at Amazon for about $8 for a 3-pack. So here I am using leverage. The bezel easily broke free. You can lift the bezel right off now after it pops free. So just as easy as that, you can see that the bezel is removed. And let's go ahead and take a look here at the mechanism here on this Vostok unidirectional. You can see it's a little detent right there. So that detent and a spring, which we'll zoom in real close here for you guys so you can kind of see what that looks like. So there's a little coil spring and a little detent there. That's what allows this to work. And there's a little cutout in the case, a little drilled hole that you drop the detent in, and here is the bezel with the teeth cut into it to allow the unidirectional function here. So you can see all that works. So pretty interesting stuff. That is how this Vostok unidirectional bezel works. And here's another close-up here of that detent so you can kind of see what it looks like here. Pretty cool, very small piece, so don't lose that. And here is how it fits into the case with the spring underneath it to allow it to function. So you can see that the spring action right there. But again, don't lose these parts. They are not held in. There's not anything that holds them in. If you flip the case over while the bezel is off, the spring and detent will be lost pretty much. And here we are taking a look at the bezel here. I've got it mounted in a vise here with some leather to protect it, and I'm going to use this heat gun here to heat up the bezel and bezel insert to soften the adhesive, and then use this little razor to kind of pick the bezel insert out. So let's go ahead and turn on the heat gun here and start heating this thing up. So this heat gun gets pretty hot, so it shouldn't take too long. But what I'm going to do is go ahead and speed up this process so you're not waiting on just me heating up the bezel. Probably took about a minute or two probably, but here I am. I've got it hot enough now. The bezel actually released on its own, and I'm using the razor to kind of just pick at it here. And guys, be careful with this. It's going to be pretty hot. Don't be like me and reach out and try to touch this bezel insert. It wasn't like super hot that burned me, but it was hot enough that I felt it. So make sure you protect yourself either with some gloves or, like I did here, after kind of getting burnt a little bit, using a needle nose pliers. So there it is. The bezel is off just like that. Just using heat, it softens the adhesive. So job accomplished here. Part 1 is done, and next up we're going to remove all the extra adhesive that's on the bezel and bezel insert. So when you do this, there's going to be quite a bit of adhesive still left on these, of course. So you'll need to remove all the old adhesive before you attempt to glue in the bezel again with the correct alignment. So here I'm showing you guys there's plenty of adhesive. You can see the type of adhesive that Vostok uses on these bezels. And I'm going to use denatured alcohol as a solvent to soften this and clean. You can use some other chemicals and solvents too. I'm using denatured alcohol. It works pretty good. I'll go ahead and speed it up again here, guys, so you're not waiting. But took about 2 or 3 minutes just scratching with my nail, also using that denatured alcohol, and it cleaned up pretty easily. So working on the bezel here, and then I got the insert done as well. So here we are, all cleaned up. You can see the bezel pretty much spotless. Took, like I said, about 2 or 3 minutes, not too bad. And then here's a look at the bezel insert, same thing, all cleaned up, basically ready for gluing back into the bezel. But one thing we're going to do before we do that is I'm going to lightly scuff up the surfaces with this Scotch-Brite pad. So just carefully, doesn't take too long, but it's going to allow the adhesive to bond a little better to the surface. So real carefully here, just real fast, I'm going to scuff up both the bezel and also the bezel insert, just lightly. It doesn't need to be too much. You can see there's the surface there that kind of is almost looks like a brushed finish. And same thing here on the bezel insert, just be real careful with that insert because you can bend it out of shape if you're not careful. So there we are, all scuffed up, and I'm using denatured alcohol again to remove any material or grime or grease prior to gluing, so that's what I'm doing here. Crucial step here, this will allow you to get the best bond. Go ahead and degrease. Make sure there's no residue on the surfaces before you bond them. So here we go, got that all cleaned up, and what I'm going to do next is actually put the bezel back onto the case here. That way I can make sure it's locked into a position here, one of those detents on the 60-click Uni-Directional, and then I will know the correct position to glue that bezel insert. So that's what what I did there. And here I'm using some contact cement. You can pick this up at Walmart, Home Depot, Lowe's. Mine is Weldwood is the brand. It's just a contact cement, so basically you put it on both surfaces, let it kind of tack over, which can take up to 20 minutes depending on how long, how thick of an application you put on. But with here, using these little small watch parts, it doesn't take very long to tack up at all, just a couple of minutes. So I'm using a little brush here to brush on that adhesive. Just be real careful that you don't go overboard on it. It doesn't need a whole lot. You don't want to make it too thick on there, so just very light. Same thing on the actual bezel, using that same brush to carefully just paint in the adhesive here. Again, try not to go overboard here, that way you don't have a whole lot of cleanup. So once you get all the adhesive put onto both surfaces, again, let it tack up for just a few minutes here. I think I let it tack up for about 3 or 4 minutes or so. Once you do that, you're basically ready to install the bezel insert into that bezel. And with contact cement, you pretty much have one shot at this, so you got to be real careful. And I'm just using my finger to make sure there's no adhesive on the exterior, only in that interior of that bezel. Just easier to clean up now than later. So what you want to do is just carefully line up. Again, if you're using contact cement like I am, just be real careful, because once the two surfaces touch, they will bond pretty much instantly, and you won't have a whole lot of wiggle room. Some other adhesives you can use, you can actually still move it. So this one, you got to be real careful. I went ahead and put the bezel insert into the bezel, got it lined up real nicely, and I just pressed it on, and here's the end result. A bezel that is properly aligned, fixed. So very pleased with how this turned out, guys. So don't be afraid to do this on your own watches. It's not that hard to do. You just got to be careful. And again, if you mess this up, just take the heat gun to it again and start over. But here it turned out really nice. Now this misalignment's not going to bug me. Here's the watch on my wrist, 6 7/8 and it's wrist for reference. And here it is, close up here, showing you guys the final look here of this bezel insert that I fixed the alignment on. Very happy how this turned out. Don't be afraid to try this, guys. It really is not that hard. So hopefully this helped you. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below, and I'll catch you on the next one. Y'all take care.